We're filming in San Diego for the Hamilton College Jazz Archive, and I am honored to have Mr. Ray Conniff with me, trombonist and arranger and composer. And I want to tell you that when I grew up in the 50s, I lived outside Rochester, New York, and it was kind of a typical suburban home. And in my house, my parents played Glenn Miller and a little Basie and a lot of Ray Conniff. So it's a real pleasure for me to be talking with you today because your sound is something that was present a lot as I grew up. And I think probably it's a pretty huge compliment to have people refer to a sound, you know, like, well, what we need is that Ray Conniff sound, or, you know, and it's been a long road, but would you do it all again? Yeah.
Oh, sure. You know, as we live life, at the time when we're doing, like now, what we're doing, we think we're doing the right thing for now. And I guess if you went back and looked at every now, you thought you were doing, I can see times when I probably could have done something a little differently, but I think on the whole, yeah, I've been very fortunate. Well, main thing I guess I've been fortunate about is that there aren't a lot of men probably that go through a lifetime and do what they really love to do, you know, and I have had that happen to me in this life, and I'm very grateful for that. Yeah. You mentioned the 50s and your family and playing Ray Conniff, and I was born in Attleboro, Massachusetts in 1916, and I would say I was exposed to music, you know, with my mom and dad as a child, 5 and 6. I have recollections of 5 and 6, you know, musical recollections. And so what are we talking about? From the well, 56 I did my first album for Columbia Records. So we're talking about 40 years right in the middle of the whole thing when you started hearing it. People thought in 1956 when my first album came out, like they think about everybody that becomes popular, wow, overnight guy here, well, where's he been, you know? But there, as you think about it, there have been 40 years of exposure to music, and my dad played piano, and a little piano. He used to play mostly chink chords, sing me little humorous songs, you know, and that tickled the heck out of me. But those little chink chords instilled a rhythm into me, made me very conscious of rhythm. And then he also played trombone. When I got a little older, he taught me to play the trombone when I was about 9, and my mom played piano and used to sing songs to me. So I was exposed to music. I'm 81 now, so I was exposed to music 40 years, yeah, about 40 years when you first heard about me.
Yeah. The songs that they were playing for you, they were probably considered popular music of that day. Were they mostly vocal songs that, you know, they had that you would sing along to?
You know, there's that's a very interesting question, because as I think about it, the music that I used to hear them play and sing, I can remember there was one thing that my mother would play. She would sing like a little soprano lead, and my dad would sing like a little obligato tenor part, and I can't remember what the piece was, but it was some semi-classical piece, and they used to do that sort of thing. But then, you know, sometimes people will come up to me, like now, this time, period of time that we're doing this interview, I'll do an interview, and someone will say, like, don't you think some of the music today is really dumb, you know? And and I remember one night they came home. They used to have minstrel shows in those days, and one night they came home from a minstrel show, and my dad was singing, "Yes, we have no bananas, we have no bananas today," you know. And I mean, how dumb can a song be, you know? And so it's always been that way. There's been great music, and then there's been very light, frivolous music, you know, and then there'd been junk, like, you know, that isn't even music, like rap. Is that music, you know? It's a rhythm with some a story, you know, and rhymes and stuff. So the music hasn't changed a lot from what I used to be exposed to.
I think you said a very important thing when you talked about how the boom chick of your father playing instilled that rhythm in you, because you can hear that in your arrangements.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's one of the keys to what's made your arranging so successful?
Well, you know, you ask very good questions, by the way. Up to that point that you're talking about, where you started hearing my music, I wasn't, before that, prior to that, like when I went through the, quote, big band era, where I played with the bands, like the first big band I played with was Bunny Berrigan in 1938. Played trombone and arranged music as well for the band. Pardon me. Then I did the same thing with the Bob Crosby Band in 1939. And then I went with the Artie Shaw Band in 1940. And down from 40 through 45, I think I played with 3 different Artie Shaw bands and wrote arrangements and played trombone besides such greats as Jack Jenny and Vernon Brown were in the band. And, but anyway, during that era, and then I wrote for the Harry James Band in 1946. That whole period, and up to where you pointed out, where the first album on my own came out, I wrote with a different objective in mind. To me, it was fun, and it was a big kick if I wrote a chart, as we called them, and after I brought it into the band and they rehearsed it, Jack Jenny or Georgie Hall in the Bunny Berrigan Band, or Joe Bushkin in the Bunny Berrigan Band, or Buddy Rich was in the Bunny Berrigan first band I was in. They said, "Hey, that was a great arrangement, Ray. I like that thing you did on Little Gate." I said, "Oh, Little Gate was the band boys' name." You know, we never thought, who's going to know who Little Gate is, you know?
Right.
We didn't think commercially. I just thought, I wonder how the guys are going to like. I wrote for the guys. I wrote for Bunny. I wrote for the guys. I wrote for Bob Crosby and the guys in the band. I wrote for Artie Shaw and the guys in the band.
Yeah.
I never thought about the people out there that were paying our bills, you know, that were paying our salaries, that went to the dances, that listened to us on the air, that bought our records. You know, I didn't care about. I never gave them a second thought. I went through a period I call the lean years. And that was, gee, I can't pin it down. I know I'd been writing for the Harry James Band, around 46. I remember the first thing I did for Harry, I still have my soldier suit on. I wrote a thing called Easy, an original. And Harry and I had a parting of the ways because a few years down the road, I was doing an awful lot of writing for Harry. I wrote a lot of originals for him. And I remember I went into, he had a song for me to do. I remember the song was Ruby. And he said, "By the way, why don't you write a little bit kind of a bop treatment on this?" Bop was kind of a new school of music was coming along, and I never did dig bop. I'd like to listen to it, and I think we had some great players like Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker, but it was not my bag, you know?
Yeah.
I'd like to hear the rhythm, you know, the driving 4/4, as Zeke Zarchi always called it, the driving 4/4 of the Northern American Negro.
Yeah.
And I always like to hear that, like Buddy Rich played that kind of drums, you know? And let's see if I can think of any. I can't think of any drummers. Who was the great drummer that was the Shaw Band? One of the first bands I was with, Davy Tuft, you know.
Yeah.
That's the way I like to hear the drums. And bop was kind of supposed to be a floating type of rhythm on top cymbals and stuff.
Right.
And you weren't supposed to hear it. You were supposed to feel it here. You were supposed to feel what he was trying. And I don't know. I never felt that. So I said, "Hey, you know, Harry, I just don't feel that kind of music. And, you know, maybe it's time you got another boy. And his jaw dropped. He looked at me, he said, he couldn't believe what I was saying. And he said, well, okay. So I left the band. For 2 years, I thought all I had to do was pick up the phone, call by all accounts, you know, like Sonny Burkett, Decca, and Paul Weston was at Columbia Records, and I called home and told everybody, hey, you know, I'm free now. I'm not writing steady all the time for Harry. I'm available. And boy, for 2 years, the phone hardly rang. And I finally, after waiting for the phone to ring for 2 years, I got so discouraged. I thought I had a wife and mother was supporting, and 3 children, and we were living out in Reseda, and I thought, I got to go get a job. I can't go on like this. I took a job. They were converting a 10-acre, was a melon field into a subdivision out in Reseda. And I went out, took a job as a laborer, cleaning up the ditches behind the ditch digger. Where he'd make mistakes on the corner, I'd clean the ditches. And I got to thinking, wow, what happened? Which way did they go, you know? I was making, in 1940, Artie was paying me $300 a week, you know, which in those days was a lot of money. And here I am out digging ditches, you know, for $60 a week. So, but it gave me a lot of time to think. But anyway, I took an awful long, I got to start pinning my answers down. It took a long time to answer your question, but I started thinking completely different about writing arrangements. I thought, what if I started writing for the people that paid the bills, the people that listened, the people that bought the records, you know? And I started thinking more along the lines of commercially, and I thought about, you know, everything in life is rhythm. Our heartbeat is a rhythm. Each day is a rhythm. The sun rises and sets to a rhythm. The ocean tides go in and out to a rhythm. The cycles of the seasons are a rhythm. And I thought, rhythm is very important in our life, and I made the rhythm very predominant. And then I remembered when I first started thinking about the opposite sex. There was a little girl down the street that I had a terrible crush on. I must be, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, something like that. And she was always singing a song. It was, ooh, would you like to take a walk? Ooh, do you think it's going to rain? And something's going to come from that is the name of the song. And to this day, I've heard that song once in a while. People will play an old record or a disc jockey. It still moves something. I thought, if I can catch the songs that people fell in love to the first few times, I've got a wonderful idea. And that's what I did. I went back and I thought, at the period when I got my first chance to do an album, the 1956 wonderful album, which you heard, or something like it, it's wonderful, it's marvelous, it's awful nice, there were 3 of them. I picked songs, and by arithmetic, I went back the number of years when the age group I was trying to hit was 18 to 35 in the market. So I went back, when were those 18 to 35-year-olds hearing, ooh, would you like to take a walk with a little girl down the street, or the boy, you know? And so by arithmetic, I picked songs from the top 10 of those years, and that's what's wonderful, marvelous, awful night. That was, and so in other words, that was I didn't change my style of writing that much. I still wrote for brass and saxes, big band style with a predominant rhythm sound, and I added the voices quite accidentally. It was just an experiment on a single I originally was backing for Columbia Records. And Mitch Miller, who was head of all the artists at Columbia, came running out. He says, this is a great sound. We got to get you back in the studio, have you do a couple of sides, Ray Conniff, orchestra and chorus, and use that orchestra and chorus sound. And so the first thing we did was a single. It was called, on one side was Begin to Begin, and I did some more research, found out the two songs that had sold the most records, had the most sheet music, and played most airplay, and it was Begin to Begin and Stardust. That was in 1956. And we put the single out, and it became like a turntable hit. It was played day and night by disc jockeys all over the United States. And as a matter of fact, well, no, it wasn't until the album. The single, oddly enough, wasn't selling very much with saturation airplay. And Columbia Records would have meetings in the marketing. What is this with this Conniff? We're not selling this single, and that's all you hear on the air. And a fellow by the name of Hal Cook in marketing come up with the answer. He says, you know, I think we're on the wrong track with Ray Conniff. He's not a single artist. He's an album artist. Get him back in the studio with 10 more songs and put out an album, and I think we'll have something. And so that's what we did. And one of the other 10 songs was Wonderful, which we decided to use for the title song. And I used that instruments and voices and instruments sound and the predominant rhythm sound and the idea about people falling in love to the songs. And then that album and the title song, That's Wonderful, that became a turntable hit. It was on a chart that Billboard magazine had for about, I don't know if it's not on any longer, but it was only 10 albums would appear on that chart, and the chart said albums most played by disc jockeys. And it was on that album, on that list of 10 for about 9 or 10 months. It would be on at 5, it would go to 7 or 8, it would go back, it would go to 2 or 3, it would go back to 9, I think, well, that's it. It would go back to 4, it would go back to 6. It stayed on there for 9 or 10 months with airplay. And, but it really didn't sell quite a bit until about 6 months. I mean, it was, you know, negligible, fairly good sale, but after 6 months, it was like your mom and dad or whoever were buying the records in those days thought, okay, somebody says, you can go buy it now if you want. They heard it so much. The airplay was wonderful. Finally, they started going in, and it became a gold record, and then we started following it up with a lot of others like it.
That's so interesting that, I mean, it was very astute of you to really have that time off and spend that time digging ditches, that really thinking about, now, what am I going to do now, and really think about what people wanted to hear and songs they fell in love with, and so that you were bringing the business and the music together. Or too often, sometimes the businessmen don't really know music at all. And you pulled them right together.
Yeah, they knew what I was doing, too. They liked the idea of what I was doing. And matter of fact, I went to a company called Motivational Institute of Motivational Research, and they got very much interested in the project, and without charging me, they did some research on my product, and then Columbia Records got them into it, and we did it further. But, you know, what was fun about it, though, was I didn't go all the way down the line and do like you know, Guy Lombardo commercial style, or I can't think of any of the real commercial bands of that time. But I was doing like a big band sound with voices, and I was using the guys that were playing all those things out on the road in the days when I was on the road. Like Billy Butterfield was playing lead trumpet, Lou McGarity was playing lead trombone, Panama Francis was in the rhythm section, Dick Hyman was playing piano. If I couldn't get Dick, I'd get Johnny Guarnieri, you know, and the guys that played with Benny's band, Jaime Schurz and Toots Mandela were playing the alto saxophone. Georgie All was playing tenor. Jerry Jerome was playing tenor. You know, it was an all-star band playing written arrangements by a guy that used to write for the big bands, but was now writing big band style for the people, and the people dug it. They could understand it, you know, because they could hear the melody. Even when the guys would play solos, they'd kind of hang around the melody because they knew what I was trying to do, you know. I used to write the solos out, and they stayed pretty close to them, you know. And so it was fun to have hit records and be doing something we all enjoyed doing as well.
Right. Let me play something for you here.
Okay.
And talking about your arranging,